Well, hey, you, and welcome back to another episode of the Western Hippie Podcast. I'm your host, Michaela. I'm here with my co host, Willie. Tank and Daisy are somewhere. So, per usual, if you hear little it's corgi paw prints because we're a dog family. Today, I really wanted to just focus on two things. One, I've really been working on and setting the intention of us pausing, sometimes at the beginning of this episode, sometimes at the ending, of celebrating and seeing what we're doing well. And I'll say why. So that's going to be the first part of the episode. The second part of the episode is I really want to break down how I booked my first client. And there's two reasons. I'll explain both of the reasons. The first reason of wanting to talk about us celebrating ourselves is because we get what we focus on. There's a part of the brain called the reticular activating system. And so how the RAS works is when something is deemed important, the RAS focuses on that. And so we see this all the time when we decide we want a new car. Okay, I want this car in this color. All of a sudden you start seeing it all over. Well, it's because you've told the RAS that this is important and therefore it's calling it out. What we don't realize is it doesn't matter what the RAS has deemed important, it is finding it. So if you believe subconsciously you are not enough, the RAS is pulling in all of this evidence that you are not enough all throughout your day. And then we have something what's called the creator field, which is the electromagnetic field. And some people call this an aura. You can look it up, but it is how the energy we are putting off, and the energy that we put off is what we get back. So if we're putting off all the time, like, I'm not enough, I'm not enough, I'm not enough, that's what we're getting back, because that is what's written in this electromagnetic / creator field. And so one of the reasons, because this is what I'm working on in real time, is noting when we are enough, when we have done enough, so that the creator field, the script in the creator field starts shifting. And then that's what we start to get back in our experience of life, is that we are enough. And so I just want you to take a pause and list 3 to 5 things that you are proud of yourself for, 3 to 5 things that you felt like, I felt valuable doing that. I felt good doing that. I'm proud of myself for doing that. Whatever terminology is coming to you, I specifically feel like it does need to be something you're proud of yourself for doing. And it can be anything from, I brushed my teeth, or I said I was going to switch deodorants and I went and bought this deodorant. I said I was going to have tea instead of coffee and I did that. Like, there's nothing too big or too small, because one of the things I've been really hard on myself about for 4 or 5 years now is I could be doing more. I should be doing more, and And because I beat myself up about it so often, I end up stop doing it. Because one thing that I've learned, especially with horses, and horses are just such a beautiful metaphor for how our instinctive, aka our subconscious brain works. You can only beat a horse so much and they will lock up, they will go into fight or flight, and they will just begin to do nothing. But if a horse loves and respects you, they will die for you. They will do anything for you. And that was what I realized, was it was like beating a horse over and over again. That's how I was treating myself. And then I would wonder why I would stop and I'd freeze and quit doing things. It's like, well, the whip can only get you so far. The carrot, on the other hand, I always think of that metaphor of a carrot on a stick. Like, that gets a lot of things a lot of ways. And I'm 29 years old. I'm going to be 30 in September. And I'm just now figuring this out and working on it, and actively working on it and shifting this for myself. And so all that to say, I usually okay, so my goal with the podcast is to start with video, do a few other things. And in a past version of me would have thought well, you said you were going to do video after 3 weeks of recording. You said you were going to do this. We were going to get da. And today was the first time I was like, I have recorded, and other than Christmas, I have published an episode every week since November, and it's now freaking February. I have not been consistent with a podcast that's my own since 2020. So same situation. There's 2 different things I can focus on. I can focus on, I wanted to be doing video by now, or I can focus on this is the most consistent I've been with my podcast since 4 or 5 years ago, almost 5 years ago now, which is insane. Which one's going to get me further? Because that's one of the things that I've really worked on over the years is not saying which one's good, which one's bad, because there's good and bad to both, but which one is more productive towards my goal and which one is more counterproductive towards my goal. This case, the goal would be to become a full-time podcaster. So which tool, which dialogue is more productive? Encouraging myself, being proud of myself, or discouraging myself? Because I know if I beat myself up, eventually it will lead to stopping or quitting altogether. But encouraging myself, I am literally encouraged to do more. So over whatever it is, whatever promise you've been making to yourself, I'm going to start eating better. I'm going to start fill in the blank, the business, the podcast, like whatever it is, ask yourself first, which one's more productive? And then the next thing we're going to talk about. So actually that is something I do want you to bring to front of mind. What is one thing that you have been promising yourself that you're going to do? And then we're going to talk about why you haven't been doing it, and why I wasn't doing it. We're going to get into both of those things in the second part. The first thing, I just want you to bring that to mind. So for me, in this case, we'll talk about the podcast. That was my goal. That was the goal that I kept putting off, was starting to record weekly episodes again. Been doing it since November. Yay me. And then today, I do feel like it is time to start doing video. I'm not doing video today, but for next week's episode, I'm like, okay, we're bringing the video back. And there was one other thing the second promise so once I got back into a routine and a rhythm of recording a weekly episode, when it didn't feel like, when I talk about getting into a rhythm and a routine, is when it becomes a non-declarable. Like I don't even debate myself anymore whether we're doing it or not. I just do it. I don't start a new habit until, this is like a new thing I've been doing. I don't start a new habit until the last habit is non-debatable. So when something is still debatable, that means I'm still working on the neural pathways. I'm still shifting the neural pathways. And there is always going to be a little bit of resistance. So it's easier to deal with the resistance on one thing than to bring 10 new things into our life. It's like fighting one battle at a time instead of fighting 10 battles at a time. How are you going to be more productive? Again, how are we going to be more productive? So now that the podcast is non-debatable, I've gotten to a rhythm. We record on Monday, we publish on Tuesday, etc. Okay, now the next thing I brought in was posting on social media. Today will be 2 weeks. I've posted on social media every day. And even now with that, it's still a little bit debatable. Like there's still a part of me that's like, but do I really want to, there's a part. So I'm not bringing in a third thing I want to shift until that is no longer debatable. And part of, for me with social media, and ironically enough, bringing video back into the podcast is going to help me with that. But part of the thing with social media is content batching. Cause if you don't follow Annie Miller, you need to follow Annie Miller. But one of the things she says is, I'm a long-winded bitch. I am a long-winded bitch. And so even for making a post on social media, it's not something I do very quickly. It's something that I take my time doing. And so the big thing for me making it non-debatable is going to be getting a plan in place. So I just wanted to give you that encouragement that if you are like me and need to put a plan in place or have a little, like, you're not alone. You're totally not alone in that. So, okay. So bring something to mind of, I want you to first list those 3 to 5 things that you can be proud of yourself for. And that could be even having the courage to bring it up as I'm speaking. It could be, that you keep thinking about it. Like just give yourself around that specific thing why you're proud of yourself. Because so many people even bury their dreams. They don't even have the balls to admit it. And so be proud of yourself. Like I had the balls to admit that this is still on my heart. Like literally 3 to 5, anything. Pause if you need to. If you need to write down, obviously if you're driving, don't. But you can also do this in a notes phone in your app. Think of one thing. So I'm going to come up with my new goal. Actually, let's work through this together because that's always fun. What would my new goal? Oh, email list. Okay, perfect. My next big goal after, like I said, before I really take action on this, I've got a little bit more of, they're actually going to tie in together. So it might be, I'm actually feeling like it's okay for me to incorporate one before I fully do the other. So, okay, perfect. I'm going to go with email list. So my goal intention right now is to build my email list. So the frame, and I just need to note this real quick. The framework I'm going to give you, because the title of this episode is Change is Not as Hard as We Make It Out. Change is not as hard as we make it out to be. This framework that I'm about to walk you through, we can literally apply to anything. So I'm going to apply it specifically to building my email list. So my first goal is to get, we'll go with 250, to get 250 people on my email list. You can put anything, release 10 pounds. I'm trying to think of other goals. The other goal, write my book. So write a book. What other goals do we have? Have a smooth ear. Actually, those are going to be my steps. Whatever goal you have. I'm like, I can only think of the goals like I have in my life. So I'm like, I don't know what other goals people would have, because these are the goals that I'm like so focused on. So, okay, got the goal, write it down. 3 to 5 things why we're proud of ourselves. Okay, proud of admitting it. Proud that I'm taking an action step by listening to this podcast today. Proud that I'm able to admit this and I haven't buried this dream. Okay, 3 to 5 things. Now, here is why change is not as hard as we make it out to be. And this, when I say we and make it out to be, this is not happening on a conscious level. This is happening on a subconscious level. So this is just the programming and the wiring within our own subconscious. So the reason it feels impossible, the reason we start to feel stuck when we go to make a change is because I'll take email list or weight loss. I feel like weight loss has been a theme on the podcast lately. So let's just go with weight loss. The reason it feels so complicated and so overwhelming is because when we say, I want to lose weight, what is the image that pops up in your mind? The image of when you are the thinnest version of yourself, correct? Correct. Thank you. And that is 30, 40, 50 steps away. So when we know we're at mile 1, and we're going to run a marathon, when we say we are 26 miles away, that feels pretty overwhelming. What is the advice they give? 1 mile at a time. And then you've got 2 miles, another mile. Now you got 3 miles. You don't actually focus on the whole picture. You just focus on the next step. So the reason it feels so complicated is because the brain is trying to comprehend how to do all 30 of those steps at once, when in reality, we just need to focus on the next step. The key is, how do we find the next step? So I personally did this protocol when I'm going to do a whole episode about it, but I quit my job in 2023 and had like some side gigs, some freelance jobs that I needed to do. I had money planned for about 6 to 8 months, and then I didn't have a plan. So after that 8 months, kind of just, it was sketch. It was very sketch. Let's just put it that way. Like I said, this deserves its own episode that I'll give it another day. And so I finally got to a point where like, I have to do something. What do I do? And this was a practice I learned from Catherine Zenkina, who's also known as Manifestation Babe. I asked, what would the millionaire version of myself do today? So this is a fun little exercise where I always picture like a fishing reel. We can cast out into the future and then we reel back into the present with our action steps. So casting out into the future is asking the question, what would the millionaire version of myself do? What would the thinnest version of myself do? What would the published author version of myself do today, where she's at? Because when we're looking at it from the perspective in the future, it's already done. So it's more simple. That's why it's so important to cast out into the future, is because think of a problem you've already solved. It seems so easy, but when we're in the beginning stages, again, it feels so hard. So that day I cast out in the future. I'm like, what would the millionaire version of myself do? And it was like, clean out my inbox, because at that time my email inbox was a freaking mess. And the millionaire version of myself would not have a messy inbox, because she would know she needed to do this, do that. And at the time I was doing like freelance design clients. So if I need to get a client's thing, if I need to send client stuff out, I don't want a messy inbox, because I don't want to be losing their stuff in the shuffle. that was the first step, clean out the inbox. And then the next step was, where am I really good at networking? Facebook groups. Bam, get into Facebook groups. Within 3 days, I had a client. So got the inbox cleaned out. And the irony is, as we do these little micro steps, we're building confidence within ourselves. So let's do that right now. Give a name to the future version. Oh, I don't know if I finished telling my story. Within 2 days, I had booked the biggest client I'd ever booked. I think it was within 2 or 3 days. I was on the discovery call, and then so from cleaning my inbox out to booking the biggest client I'd ever booked, the discovery call was within 2 or 3 days. And then I actually booked the client in like 4 or 5 days. And yeah, it was a $5,500 client. So it was amazing. And so from going to like, I don't know how I'm going to like go buy food next week to booking a $5,500 client within 5 days, pretty stoked. And it was literally the 2 steps was cleaning out my inbox and networking in Facebook groups. And so cast out, first name the future version of yourself. So the thinnest version of myself, Slim Susie, whatever you want to name it. Author Annabelle, whatever, just put a name to it. And so, what would I think I would cast for this email list. I think I would cast back out to Millionaire Michaela, because Millionaire Michaela has got a badass freaking email list. So cast out. And then what is the step that I need to do? Ask the millionaire version of yourself. Sometimes people ask this and they can see like that future version of themselves. They can see the lips moving. Sometimes they just feel it in their gut. If you need to ask a few questions like, what's your name? What's your favorite color? To see how you communicate with future versions of yourself. Everyone is a little bit different. So I'm asking her, what do I need to do today? I need to create the freebie. I need to actually create the freebie. My 2 steps: create the freebie, create the funnel, and then I'm going to use something called ManyChat. And when I start posting, this is why it ties in for me, why it ties into my social media, because I'm going to start having my call to action on my post be to comment, blah, 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 to get the link to the freebie. And then I'm going to start building it that way. So those are my first few action steps. And then reel back into the present. When you get your action, just one, you just need to get one. You can always, I know mine because I've been doing this. I've been sitting with what my action steps are for my email list for a couple of weeks. So I do know that. It's kind of cool we're doing this on the podcast together though, because I haven't got the green light to do it yet because again, I've been building my momentum and building my confidence in my social media stuff. So I don't know. It's always just so fun, much more fun to do this together. So thank you. Thank you for being here with me. Thank you for doing this with me. I hope this is helping you as much as it's helping me. So go back in. So now we're here. When do you have time to do that action step and actually get it in the calendar? Ideally, you need to do it today. And this action step should only take you like 10 to 15 minutes tops. And if it's something that's more than that, like clean out, like if it's like clean out your kitchen, start buying, clean out your kitchen, start buying food here, blah, blah, blah. Just clean out one shelf on the pantry. Like literally make it something that is only going to take you 10 or 15 minutes to do. Like I said, if it's a bigger step, just simplify it to ask yourself the question, what's one step I could do today that's only going to take me 10 or 15 minutes? Clean out an end table. Because what God, source, higher self, they just want us to see to take one action step in the right direction. God helps those who helps themselves. I love country music, and there's a song called Me in the Middle. And it's like, how can we meet God in the middle? Because God's already at the middle. So in my perspective, source, a higher self, if they're not helping us, it's because we're actually just not meeting them in the middle. They're already there. So how do we take one step closer to them? Because source and God really do treat us like we treat babies when they're learning how to walk. They celebrate us for every one step we take. It's us who doesn't celebrate ourselves for every one step we take. So that's why it was so important for us to start naming like what we're proud of ourselves for in the beginning, is because we need to start celebrating ourselves for that. Because the more we celebrate, the more in capacity we're going to have to do. Because it's been interesting me stepping back in and doing design and creative projects, because I realized what was shutting my creativity down was how hard I was being on myself. And so if you were laying on the ground and needed help up, if someone came along and kicked you, would it help you up or would it shove you back onto the ground? If the answer is it would shove and or keep you back down on the ground, that is the equivalent to us wanting to do something and shit talking ourselves. We're kicking ourselves when we're already on the ground. And again, the only reason that I decided to quit doing this, it's not because I'm not a person that's like, oh, rainbows and butterflies and we can go out and live our best lives and blah, blah, blah. I'm really not like that. I've always been, there's always a camp of two people, like the people that run away from pain and the people that walk towards pleasure. I've always been more of a run away from pain. I'm just now getting to the point in my life where I feel like I'm walking towards pleasure. And the only reason I decided to make that switch is because I asked myself, is it productive or is it counterproductive to the goal I'm currently setting? So for the email list, me beating myself up over not having it done already, because actual execution wise, when I put my head down, I work very fast. And so is it going to actually be productive to help me get it up, to beat myself up of why it was over not done 2 weeks ago? No, it's not. What is going to help me is like, how can I make this freebie? Because I'll make a freebie. Like, how can I make this enticing? How can I make this amazing? How can I make this something that someone's going to say, I need that now? Because if they need that now, then I get their email. And that's the goal. So, if you struggle like me with just beating yourself up, keep asking yourself that question with whatever goal I've just now set while listening to this show. Is it productive or is it counterproductive? And there's actually something else I'm going to work on this with when I get off. Again, because like one of the reasons I felt called to this is like, I know I need this reminder too. And I needed the reminder of that day when I was just like, what is the first step I need to take? And it is as simple as cleaning out the inbox. And yeah, so just to recap the episode before I close out today is the reason change feels harder for us is because we're focusing too far in the future. We go into the future to get our action step, but then we have to cast back and focus back on just the first step ahead of us. Where I learned this from actually was CrossFit. I did CrossFit for a few years, and Murph is the memorial WOD that you do over Memorial Day. And it's a mile run, 100 push-ups, 200 sit-ups, and 300 squats, and then another mile run. You just got to do the mile run. You just do it. But we never said, oh, we're doing 100 push-ups, 200 sit-ups, 300 squats. We always said we were doing 10 rounds of 10, 20, 30. So 10 rounds of 10 push-ups, 20 sit-ups, 30 squats. And that's how you got through it. You never did. I think there was a few people who did, but it was never, you did. I think technically somebody that does CrossFit's listening to this and was like, it's not done properly if you don't do them all in order. I don't know. There is something, I think, that if you want to like do this WOD and clock it, it has to be 100, 200, but we were just doing it for a fundraiser. So as long as we did the reps, our coach didn't care. But we never told ourselves we were doing that many, because in the brain, it's like, you want me to do how many? But when you say 10 sets of 10, 20, 30, it's like, oh, I can do that. It's the same as my uncle would say. It's the same thing, only different. We're just telling the brain the thing that the brain can get wrapped around so that we can start building momentum, building our confidence, and just get the ball rolling. That's the only goal on everything you chose today, is to just get the ball rolling. It's not to get the ball to the finish line. It's just to get it going. And all that takes is one step in the correct direction. And you have the correct direction because you literally got the step from the version of yourself that you wish to become. So with that being said, thank you for listening to another episode of the Western Hippie Podcast. I'm your host, Michaela, here with my co-host, Willie the Corgi. If you found value in today's episode, it would mean so much to me if you would rate and review the show. That helps me know what you want me to talk about in the weeks to come. It also just helps me build the show and get closer to that goal of becoming a full-time podcaster. I really appreciate you being here with me today, walking through that with me. I hope it was as helpful as it was for you. And Willie and I will talk to you next week.